they had like a mountain of bugs. Fixing a bug took 3 to 5 days. They could do something that was taking 5 days in like 20 minutes.
I don't know if developer friendly is a thing that is possible.
How are my engineers going to react to this? So you could plug into a data store, pull data from that, and then push it to the web. An engineer could have done that previously, but they probably wouldn't. AI doesn't have that knowledge. Roughly like 70% of MCP servers are local servers, run locally rather than things you connect, you just block. And the engineer's like, what the hell? You've just stopped my flow working.
Is developers first security possible with AI? A lot of times the answer may seem like no because of the speed of AI. My conversation with Bryan, who is the CTO of an AI security company called Harmonic Security, came and spoke about how they have been working with their own developers to have a developer-first AI culture. We also spoke about some of the changes that are coming with MCP, or Model Context Protocol, that was released by Anthropic, how they're adopting it in their organization with MCP gateways, and also how you can progress through a maturity model for AI security as part of a security program. All that and a lot more in this conversation with Bryan from Harmonic Security. As always, if you enjoy this episode, or if you know someone who would like to understand the AI security, the different maturity levels and MCP security and all of that, definitely share this episode with them as well. And if you've been watching or listening to an episode of this podcast for some time and have been finding it valuable, I really appreciate if you could take a quick second to hit the subscribe button. It only takes a second for you. It's free for you, but it means a lot that you show support for the work we do here, and it helps grow our reach as well. Thank you so much for supporting the work we do, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Enjoy this conversation with Bryan, and I'll see you soon. Peace. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Cloud Security Podcast. I've got Bryan with me from Harmonic Security. Hey, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, nice to meet you, Ashish. It's lovely to be on the show today.
But dude, I'm so excited for this developer first conversation. But maybe to kick things off, if you can share a bit about yourself, where you are, what's your background into this world of IT and cybersecurity?
I'm Bryan, I'm CTO and co-founder at Harmonic here. My background primarily is like in engineering, so I was a developer for 10 or 15 years, writing code every day, and haven't written it for 10 years, but I still kind of see myself. If I got the coding gloves on, I could still do it. I went from there to be the CTO at kind of Digital Shadows, which is a threat intelligence company, and then myself and my co-founder Al set up Harmonic a couple of years ago. And Harmonic, we kind of set it up to kind of help organizations adopt AI, but adopt AI securely. So we give AI governance and controls, and the kind of special sauce that we provide as an organizations. We're looking at kind of user intent and the kind of data and understanding what AI adoption is actually happening within organizations and allowing them to control that and help them adopt it safely.
And talking about AI adoption safely as well, a lot of people are in that experimental phase. Some people have gone to the next point as well. What do you find as the contention point for why people's usage of AI kind of stops at that experimentation stage? Is it just because government is failure, or what have been the conversation that you've been hearing from CISOs and others on why some of that's failing if it's not even picked up early?
Yeah, I think there's two things that pop in my head. One is I think there's definitely like employees who are adopting AI, whether organizations like it or not. So like I think one of the interesting things for me is like and probably why we started the company, right? Was ChatGPT came out, and the first thing that I'd used for ages, and you're like, oh, Jesus, like look at what it can actually do. Like you could just see, even at that early stages, what could happen and like what capabilities it could provide. And then so you think of like why employees are adopting AI today is like there's so much it can do to help them do their job better, to help their business better. And then if you think of what the organizations are thinking, they're thinking we typically when we talk to customers, we obviously are a vendor, so we're trying to bucket everyone in, trying to sell to them, etc. But in general, people fall into like two large buckets. You get kind of the blocking company where it's like they've traditionally blocked everything, and they open up a very small amount, and they're very like they've got a lot of controls, a lot of governance on every single thing to the nth degree. And then there's a permissive group who, like, because of that culture, they're kind of quite open, and both of them are trying to adopt AI, but they're coming from different routes into that kind of problem. And I think they see different things.
I'm with you on the split behind this. There's a thought process here where a lot of people say that a lot of organizations may have started as an experimentation, but generally that's where governance failure also is a thing that happens, which a lot of CISOs and other people may not be able to pick up. because you can't really tell the difference at what point is it experimentation versus now you have production data in there. Was there something along those lines that you were seeing as blind spots?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely like there's people we speak to and they know like we're using these sites because they've got some firewall type telemetry around like that, but they don't know what people are actually doing underneath it. So they don't have the context of like is it experimentation, is it production, is it someone asking about like what they should eat for dinner tonight? Like they've got no idea about what's actually going on there. So I think like the even though they can tell that there's a certain amount of traffic going to this website, it's like what does that actually mean to an organization? And I think a lot of them don't know. They just are like, well, we've bought this ChatGPT enterprise license.
Yeah.
We're all good now. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Like, what are people actually doing on that? Are they actually using that particular license? Are they using lots of other sites as well? So I think that there's the thing to me of like having the idea of governance where you don't have any governance at all, but you don't actually know what's going on under the covers. I think that's probably the big thing.
Uh, so this whole idea or the notion behind I have quote unquote my AI under control, would that be like a false sense of security? And perhaps why is that considered like a false sense of security?
Yeah, I think some people probably do, right? I think like the most mature organizations probably have kind of leaned into it and leaned into it early. So I don't think it's kind of like a blanket statement, but I think the majority cases probably there's a whole bunch of things going on, whether you call it shadow AI or something else, where
Yeah.
there's usage that is going on in an organization that you're not aware of and you don't understand, and it can produce risks of whether that is risk of your data going somewhere that's going to train on it, for example, or
Yeah.
uh, people using personal accounts so that if they ever move
Actually,
job,
yeah.
they take all your data and all your prompts with you. So I think
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of different things that could occur from that.
But I guess because you've obviously come from a threat intelligence background, and I'm sure you would have noticed that a lot of these seems to be like to your point, if I had my personal Gmail versus my work Gmail,
Mhm.
that's it's not a new problem. Like, why is AI is this fundamentally different? And if it is, so why? But if it's not, then can we just reuse what we already have?
Yeah, I see it's different, but I probably would say that with the but the I see it's a different problem probably for a couple of reasons. One is I think it's like the kind of power that AI can bring to a business. So if you think about some of the newer things people are doing with agents,
Yep.
you kind of are doing the same job. So I think an example of one of our customers was telling me about last week where uh, they had like a mountain of bugs and they never got to them at their organization, and like fixing a bug took 3 to 5 days per bug, and they had a whole bunch of them. So like they were like they in they had a process where they look at it, they look at logs, root cause analysis, write some code, check it works, deploy it, etc. And the engineers started experimenting with like using Claude Code and using MCP to kind of do that job automatically. So they could do something that was taking 5 days in like 20 minutes, and they could parallelize it so you could do them in multiple times. So like to some extent you're doing the same job as before, right? Because
Yeah.
you're still doing root cause analysis, you're still writing code, but the AI is doing it within that process, and it's doing it a lot faster and a lot more. So like all the governance you used to have around writing code and access to different systems is
Yeah.
kind of been given away and it's been amplified. So it's been happening. So like do you need the same controls for that you had before, which is probably a lot of like manual, like human reviews and efforts like that, or do you need a more intelligent control that's kind of understands the intent and where information is going and what's going on within that process?
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
me, it's the scale of it and the kind of and the access it has, and also like AI isn't a black box, right? It doesn't always produce
Yeah.
the same answer. So with all those three things together, I think to me it does feel like a different problem that needs a different solution.
Yeah, I think you've touched on an interesting point because a lot of the earlier problems we had were also driven by the fact that security was always told to be, hey, you have to be developer friendly. Developer first is a slogan that's been, I don't think people have forgotten in all the AI experimentation we're doing, but that's definitely a thing. And I guess to what you were saying, where hey, you may have visibility into some of the enterprise licenses you've signed up for that we were saying earlier, but then there is this whole experimentation being allowed for developers, so that clearly they need to innovate, and security needs to find out a way that, oh, I mean, I'm going to keep all the production data separate, and that's good enough. But I don't know if developer friendly is a thing that is possible. Obviously, you guys are running an AI security company yourselves, so you may have similar
Yeah.
challenges to the developers that you have on your side. I'm curious, is it possible? One of the reasons why I was asking if it's fundamentally different is that one driving factor for a lot of organization is that, hey, it needs to be developer first. And is that notion or developer first still possible in an AI world? And if it is, how have you been able to kind of walk that path? And where is the comfortable path? I know there's no perfect answer, but I'm curious, where's the comfortable path that you've been able to find between
Yeah.
what you're doing and the customers that you're working with?
Yeah, you remind me of like when we speak to customers about doing something, we have an MCP gateway, so you need to put it on a developer's workstation. And whenever we talk to them, you can see the fear in their eyes of like, oh, how are my engineers going to react to this? So I can
Yeah.
and get what's going on. But yeah, I guess we use AI within Harmonic. I guess we're in some ways it's easier for us, right? We are an AI first company. We were born in the AI era, so like we can adopt a whole bunch of things quickly. We can put controls in, and also our product is kind of looking at controls. But yeah, I think we've kind of evolved or kind of iterated to a decent position within how we kind of operate. So like
Yeah.
we focus on there's kind of almost like our kind of standard set is like using Cloud Code for a lot of our kind of more agentic flows, but we also experiment quite a lot around the side of that. But it's
Yeah.
essentially we probably define what's experimentation and what is production code as a separate thing, even though they're
Yeah.
using
Yeah.
the same tools. And I think our security team are really looking at like what are the different pinch points they care about within that process. So like they're not trying to control everything, but it's like as you said, like access to production data.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
what can access that? Where can it access how much? And all you kind of to that extent, standard things that you put on employees. I think
Yeah.
the difference is the obviously if AI is doing that task versus your employee, then how do you get those controls? And we've been, I guess, eating our own dog food or whatever the drinking our own
Yeah.
champagne,
Yeah. Or
whatever
the French,
analogy you
the way the
want.
French would, you drink your own champagne.
Yeah.
Mm.
So like we the tools that we've been making for customers, we've been running at Harmonic. So we had our MCP gateway like 3 or 4 months before we kind of put it on for customers, where we were kind of trying different things out, seeing where we wanted to add in additional controls around
Yeah.
certain things like I guess with an MCP you've got things like destructive actions. Like we don't really want AI to be creating the new Jira projects.
Yeah.
We don't want it to be creating Git repositories because we're not trying to build like I'll go and build my whole website from scratch and some prototype thing. It's more like we we want you to do this feature, so we want you to exist within our own architecture. So we've spent a lot of effort putting in place things that I guess that they've kind of evolved into Claude skills, but we were trying to do a similar thing before, just using Claude code and kind of templates and like mark
Ah.
documents with like our architecture. So you're pushing it in certain directions.
And I guess you obviously touched on MCP, and what I found in a lot of conversations I've had, where MCP, as much as it may feel for people who are living and breathing the AI world, MCP is like, oh yeah, yeah, I know what MCP is and everything else. It's definitely still not common among many organizations. If you, especially the ones probably who are more aware of it, could be the ones who are on that developer first landscape. Could you describe MCP and what was the point or what was the reason for going down the path of building this MCP gateway for yourself, and what led you
Mhm.
guys down that path?
Yeah. So yeah, in terms of like what MCP is, I guess like you've got a whole bunch of applications that had APIs, right? So
Yeah,
they're all different, and essentially what MCP is in, I think it's got like two main purposes. So one is like trying to standardize what that interface is to lots of different APIs, so that the AI can just use one interface. And
yeah,
then I think the second thing that I think people forget is like as an engineer, whenever you looked at API documentation, you'd be like, what the hell does all this mean? Like, I know what I want to do, but like
Yeah.
what like as a developer, you wouldn't know which things to call,
Yeah.
and you probably
Yeah.
have to read
The
their
API
document.
definition used to be, if you look at the list of the slashes you can go down the path of, yeah, and I mean, that is the ones that have been documented, not the ones which are not even documented.
Yeah, so like this for me, MCP, it gives that kind of standard interface, but it also gives the instructions to the AI on how to use itself. So I think the AI doesn't know anything about these interfaces.
Yeah.
It pulls in the MCP spec and it then understands, all right, how can I best use this GitHub MCP server? So that's like your server instructions, your tool instructions. So it's almost like guidance for the AI to be able to use all these different tools. And the
Right.
best MCP servers, they don't just wrap an API, they kind of give those great guidance on. So if an MCP plugs it in, it can automatically use it straight away without like the user. There's a lot of times where as a user, you have to like change your prompt to get it to call the right MCP deals. But if you've got a really well designed MCP server, it can call them directly. I guess why do we make our kind of gateway? It's born out of, I guess, I talked about ourselves wanting those kind of controls, but also a kind of the way we think about product is like listening to our customers and responding. So at first people were saying they didn't come in and say, we want an MCP gateway. Obviously they came in and said, I'm really worried about what my engineers are doing. I know they're probably using lots of AI and lots of tools, but like, what are they doing? So like, we researched that area, and probably there's like 2 or 3 different initiatives come out that we're working on internally. But one of them was around MCP, and it was like people were probably seen it in a similar way to things like third party libraries you might add into a code repository. So like
Oh, yeah.
we want to have some way of reviewing and risk assessing those and then putting some controls around what is available to be used or not. And then
Mm,
again, they were also looking at like the if these can connect to my different data sources, what ones are they connecting to and what data's flowing between different systems? Because you could plug into a data store, pull data from that, and then push it to the web. And an engineer could have done that previously, but they probably wouldn't because they've got an inbuilt knowledge of what is acceptable, whereas the AI doesn't have that knowledge. So it can
yeah.
just
Yeah.
data here, push it over there, and that's the issue that the organizations were worried about.
Interesting. Because so again, to summarize,
Yeah,
MCP or Model Context Protocol is a plug and play kind of a thing for what traditionally was called API before, where
yeah,
someone would say, "Hey, I want to talk to the API of Amazon or talk to the API of GitHub," to your example. But instead of doing that, I can use the AI plug and play my GitHub MCP or my Harmonic MCP or any other MCP that I want to go down the path of. And you said something really interesting as well there, because a lot of people, and again, it goes back to what you were saying about the visibility part, where I may have an understanding, but I don't know what kind of data is flowing through it. Obviously, and I would say there's still a lot of things are being evolved, because a lot of people would hear this for the first time and go, oh, what are my top 3 things that I should be looking out for from an MCP perspective? Am I getting an MC? Am I building an MCP gateway myself? What are the top 3 things that comes to mind for you where people who are probably looking at MCP that they should at least go, okay, bare minimum, at least use these 3 to even get some
yeah.
kind of comfort? Is there a top 3 that comes to mind?
Yeah, I was on another panel the other week, and someone asked this question, and I try to summarize what how we've been hearing about it, and like I think the top level is just like give me visibility into what was being used, but it's like
Mhm.
basic level of like inventory, like what clients and servers have been used, what tools have been used, so you can get a sense of like where your usage is, how much usage there is, what departments are using it within your organization. So
Yeah.
you know, usage information, telemetry, call it what you like. And then the second thing was like we want those access controls so we can approve or risk assess a server, and most companies want to try and get down to like an approved set of servers,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether they're official ones from sites, whether they're like homegrown ones, but like they kind of want to get to a smaller subset that they're happy with, and a process of then been able to add new ones over time as their process evolves. So it's kind of like visibility, and we call that middle bit access controls, but it's like a way of doing risk assessment and providing access to MCP. Below that, I think the there's the specific risks around it they might care about. So things around data, like what data is going where, more kind of like adversarial risks, like prompt injection, other type of attacks that might happen within our organization. I think it's like that's when those things start to come in as like the third level. But I think there's probably quite a gap between the first two, and the first two feel like the basics to get something basic in place that gives you that control and kind of that governance, I guess, of that the MCP usage. And then below that, it's like now we've got those general basic controls in place. How do we then worry about specific threat vectors, whether that's like data loss or whether that is around an adversarial kind of attack on your organization?
I think it's a good point. Also, worthwhile calling out as well, at least from what I've seen so far, a lot of people are running MCP locally on their laptops as well. It's not that it's hosted. I mean, obviously, we used the example of GitHub earlier,
Yeah,
but that's the other half. That's the port you're plugging into, but the cable is coming from you somewhere. Is that
yeah,
how I describe it, right? Like it's someone's local laptop at that point in time, right?
yeah. And I think that there's a few reasons for that. So I think and from our kind of stats, I think roughly like 70% of MCP servers are local servers. So like, and that's probably across the board what is running. So they're kind of servers that run locally rather than things you connect to. So like, well, I guess why is that? And like, it's probably worth saying that you can probably write a local MCP server using like Claude code or something within like 3 or 4 hours. It's not like a long task. Like if you imagine like you're setting up your own API and you had to set up your own infrastructure, like a
Yeah,
local MCP, 3 or 4 hours later, you've got something that will help you connect into different systems you need to connect to.
yeah,
They also you don't need to worry about networking to an extent. So it's
mm,
like if the engineer's already got access to some data or some systems on his local machine, if they run an MCP server locally, it's got the same access rights. Whereas if you start hosting it on the internet and then you want to talk to your databases or different systems that you've kind of got behind a VPN or whatnot, then it's like you then have to start worrying about networking and internet access. So like, the engineer who wants to experiment wants to get on faster. Like
yeah,
it's easier for them to run it locally. And some of the last point is probably like some of the tools need local capabilities because they run commands and whatnot on the operating system to operate so that
yeah.
they can do their job. So like if you add those three things together, then it makes sense that someone runs it locally on their machine and kind of develops it that way. And that's typically what we've seen internally and for our kind of customers' usage.
Do you find that a lot of people have built their architecture or at least evolved their architecture into a data security centric view or data security centric model? Does this kind of work in this context as well? Because throughout what you were saying, if my MCP server or my MCP client is on my local laptop, but I could access GitHub before, by extension, and my MCP can access GitHub as well because my laptop could access this. There was already a network port open. And
Yeah,
so does data security centric architecture at that point in time give you some kind of security or some layer of security? Because my hope is they would still be kept away from production data.
yeah. It depends. Like what you're probably always kind of like some organizations have good controls around their production data, right? But there probably still is routes where engineers can get access, even if it's like just in time access to those databases if you're doing troubleshooting or other type of things. So it depends. If you imagine, if you go back to the beginning, we talked about like permissive and blocking organizations. Imagine in a blocking organization, getting access to production data is probably hard, and you're probably going through like 5 or 6 steps to get on there to
Yeah,
get access to data, and so you probably can't run MCP locally without network changes and whatnot to do that.
yep,
Or if you could do it, it's hard enough that it's a barrier for someone not to try and do that. But I imagine a lot of organizations that are more permissive, they might still have controls around it, but they probably are controls where an engineer can still have access to production data and data systems from their local desktop. Like
I mean,
I
because
think
to your point, a lot of people have to be developer first. And in a developer first world, you almost, to your point, would be more on the permissive side rather than the blocking side.
yeah.
Is there a developer friendly way of adopting MCP while remaining safe?
Yeah, I think that I think what the way we're trying to approach it is that it's having that sitting on the endpoint with the end user so that you can. I think one of the big things we don't just do MCP, we look on the browser and the endpoint in general. And one of the things that we think about is like almost like a focus on coaching at the point of time of data loss or other types of events that you want to step in the middle of. So I think like if you think about the user, the developer first view of that is you want to be transparent when they're just doing their job and there's nothing to worry about. I think when you do need to step in, I think the something that we're trying to do is to step in a way that is almost doesn't just block. Because I think like the example I gave earlier of fixing bugs. Let's say that
Yep.
takes 12 minutes because it has to look up logs, it has to do root cause analysis, it has to write code. So it might take 12 minutes to do that agentic flow. And if after 10 minutes you just block and the engineer is like, what the hell? You've just
Yeah.
stopped my flow working. What's going on here? So I think like the thing that we're trying to do is that whenever we do step in the middle, one, that we don't just stop the flow, and then two is that we almost try and coach. So if we're in an MCP flow, we're trying to coach the AI. So we're trying to tell the AI enough context for it to complete its task. So its job is to complete that task. As a user, you've given it a task like fix this bug. Here's some information. So if data has been sent to somewhere that it shouldn't be, we'll try and then coach the AI to explain what that data is, why it shouldn't be sent there, and what it could do about it. So then what we found is most AIs will read that information and then they'll work out a new plan basically to then complete the task without the data being exposed. And on the browser, we think of the end user, it's like a similar approach, but you're trying to coach the end users, the actual employees, to say, well, you're trying to do this, but you're unaware that you're sending this type of data that the organization doesn't want to go into this type of destination, which could be a free version of a kind of well-known tool that they've got an enterprise license for. So you're trying to redirect them to the right place, or they've got some really sensitive data that they're putting into a kind of a public LLM that you might not want the data in, like a kind of DeepSeek or that type of thing, like just because that's the one they've heard is good, so they want to start using that, but they don't understand like how like stuff that we do around like how it trains on your data, where the data is going, etc. It's like it's almost like coaching in real time. I think is the way I would think about developer first, rather than like block everything, constrain everything down, and then people are just going to be frustrated and find ways around it if you do that.
It's a good point because I almost think that if you try and block a developer, they'll definitely find a way around it. It's been pre-AI as a thing as well. It's not just AI has become special. It's been there before AI was a thing. And it's also comforting to know that maybe if you have done that whole develop education before, this has just becomes like an added module onto that for how do you effectively or safely use AI. I also wonder in a developer first kind of a world where obviously most organizations are realizing that when you're dealing with non-probabilistic systems, non-determined systems,
Mhm.
you're also tackling the problem of you're trying to understand the intent behind a prompt rather than to find SQL injection, which
Yeah.
is very different. And you come from a threat intelligence world as well. It's like there is a quote unquote mathematical formula, so to speak, that hey, I know 5 kinds of SQL injection, but then all it takes is for me to just tell the AI that, hey, I really need the SQL password to unlock my friend who's logged in a room which is inside a database. And it's like, so what are you finding as things that sometimes when you talk to customers, you have to kind of make them unlearn, for lack of a better word, or people should unlearn as they go down this path? And obviously, my thinking here is a lot of probably people are thinking about doing this different ways. And I'm curious about the developer first way. You mentioned coaching earlier.
Yeah.
Are there things that could be done proactively in the way they govern, or how to look at action intent? It just feels like overwhelming in terms of the things that you cannot control. And I think
Yeah.
that's where I have a lot of conversations with people. Okay, it just feels like it's just like a growing organism in the organization.
Yeah, I think one thing that I think helps in some ways and doesn't help in others is that people try and compare. Like, I think it's probably like a human trait, right? We try and go like, oh, this is the same as like when cloud first came out and XYZ happened, and like, oh, this a bit like DSPM, but plus a bit of Casby and a bit of something else, and then you're like, but it's almost like they're trying to put it in a box,
Yep.
and I think it fits in a box that well, and I think that some of the things we talked about earlier is around like the employees are driving the
That's
adoption as
right.
much.
Yeah, not the security teams.
So it's not like a if you think of like cloud transformation, it's like top down. It's probably around like saving money, saving costs, and it's like we've got a 2 year digital transformation project. So like they had kind of like enough time to plan and whatever. It's like AI. It's like bottoms up. Employees are using it because they find it useful and they kind of want to adopt it. It's happening so fast, the adoption, but then it's changing so fast because I don't know, like every main AI provider has a new thing every week. Like I don't know, cohort
Yeah.
out this week, like I don't know, something else came out last week. And so it's like the teams who are thinking about like I want to manage this, they're kind of thinking about it in like traditional ways of like how things used to be. And I think it's
Yeah.
to me it's you mentioned it's like employee driven, it's fast and changing, and then also the AI itself is not predictable, so
Yeah.
it's going to
Yeah.
give you different results. So it's like I think the way we see it is like getting that initial visibility, so understanding where usage is, and not just that you're using these sites, but with the right level of context and intent, so you can really understand where like, what parts of an organization are using AI for what reasons, and then adding the controls in, but trying to be almost take a positive approach on controls. So it's like just in time coaching and development of your employees rather than like let's lock everything down and not allow everything. So I think like it's hard to pick the thing to lock down in a kind of in its entirety. It's easier if you're looking at that intent and that focus on what someone's trying to do and then
Yep.
blocking for a particular reason. And I think that you talked about policies earlier as well. Like I think the policy can come through within those coaching moments as well, rather than like here's a 30-page policy document no one's going to read, or like we've given you 30 minutes on training, like why aren't you following our policy? It's like I think policy has it. There is a control element, but it can also be a kind of positive element or positive experience in terms of like how you adopt and how you want to push people to the right areas.
Do you find that accountability is also evolving? I mean, obviously, earlier there was a way for me to find out that it was Ashish who triggered an action. And I guess we were talking about MCP on a local laptop. We were talking about Shadow AI earlier. A lot of that traditionally used to be a corporate IT problem.
Mhm.
Sometimes, and in majority of cases, not a cybersecurity problem. Like there was a head of IT or head of corporate IT who was looking after it. I mean, are you finding the way we were handling different kinds of scenarios as, hey, that is Brian's department, this is Ashish's department, we don't talk to each other? Are you finding that the current way to, and I think to what you said, it's not another cloud movement that is another digital transformation that's going to go for 2 years and top down? This is very much bottom up. Developers are already using it. If they're telling you, they're not using it, I'm pretty sure they're using it personally and just copy pasting the code when they work
Yeah.
from home or whatever. Do you find that accountability and the way responsibilities are split for security is also changing with AI, or needs to change with AI? And does the organization need to change in the way they approach security in general?
Yeah, I'd say I think the majority of places I see it is from when we talked to a whole bunch of customers, prospects, and in general we always talk to the security team because there's a security element to it, but there's a whole bunch of new job titles and like they're not all the same yet, but I've seen ones where they brought in like a head of AI development, and so
Yeah.
they bring them into the engineering org as someone who
Oh,
owns
in
it.
the engineering org.
Yeah, so there's that where it's like so specific, where it's like we've been brought in to manage AI, but they're
Like
more
code
around like
development.
yes, but they're kind of like they're probably from a engineering background and maybe a data background, but they've been brought
Yeah.
into there. So that's kind of one thing. I think most organizations have a AI committee now,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I've seen that evolve a little bit into like because that was almost like well, we've got an AI committee and we've pulled in the CIO and someone from security and someone from legal, someone from compliance.
Privacy as well as there. Yeah.
Right. But then now there's like it seems like there's more like permanent people in those roles. So it's like, oh, this is our head of AI or this is our kind of AI compliance person or so it almost feels like that committee model's evolved into like we have a department now and it's a small department around AI. Like I'm interested like how that evolved. So I think this is I'm not sure what it's going to go to, but these are I think what is happening in the wild is you've got probably some micro stuff at the department level where you're like we need to adopt AI. Our engineering team need to develop faster. We can't just have a legacy approach to it. So we're bringing people in there, and then at the top level of our business, it's like, how do we adopt AI in general as a company? Like, what are we doing? So there's like new roles being created, and I think they're
Yeah.
all slightly different and the different takes on it. So I think like to me, it still needs to converge a little bit and probably see like what is actually working in those organizations and yeah, it's
Are you
interesting.
finding that AI is at that point? Obviously, there's multiple usage to the AI piece. There's obviously on the cloud side, people are using it to develop infrastructure as code. Software developers are using it to produce code. Then there is the other side where people are using for productivity. I mean, code creation is a form of productivity, but there's also email summary, and there's a whole another side that probably is not getting a lot of attention is with the whole integration of AI into your existing products and features being developed for it. Quote
Yeah.
unquote AI capabilities being added to existing products. Do you find in the conversations you've had with people or customers and prospects, are there clear signs, or are you finding that majority people have AI in production in some way, shape, or form? Or is it more the fact that it's a more inside productivity thing rather than a hey, I have a feature on my application, which is more than a chatbot? Because to your point, that kind of raises the risk bar at that point in time,
Yeah.
where it's I'm no longer just producing some cloud formation template for my AWS instance. Now this thing is in production, and Ashish, the random malicious person on the internet, could actually do a prompt injection kind of a
Yeah.
thing. So are you finding that there's like in terms of level of coverage that you find with between your customers and prospects, is there the usage of AI? On which side is of the fence is it on?
I guess in the people we our kind of like customer base is generally like 1,000 employees up, so they're kind of
Yeah,
generally fairly large enterprise to like you kind of like 100,000 plus kind of organizations. Like I think they're more in the sense of like they want the workforce.
yeah,
They're worried about the workforce side of it, and I think the example I was on a call last week and someone described what they're trying to do is like 10x every employee, which I thought was I'm going to use that again in like future. That's but that's kind of that's like one of their like they're a huge company. Like that's one of their like key company objectives is like 10x every employee via AI. It's like
yeah,
that's I think that just shows how people are thinking about it. I think the people building AI into their products. There's probably like two things. And one is like I've heard a lot of people talking about we've got AI or agents in production.
yeah,
And when you get into it, it turns out that that's still just a developer running kind of an agentic flow within Claude Code. So there is some agentic information going on there.
yeah,
Or there was kind of probably a rush in the beginning for everyone to essentially whack a chatbot onto their product. Like that's the
yeah, yeah,
classic.
yeah.
So they whack that chatbot on and then they're like, oh no, now that chatbot's got
I'm
access
AI
to
first.
so it's like yeah. And then there's so that's probably the predominant things that we see. And then there are some that's probably a bit more interesting where they are thinking about like how to embed AI within the guts of their products and kind of where
Yeah,
they can go. And I think they probably less common, and
Interesting.
they're not quite our focus. But I think that the majority of people they're more worried about, yeah, their general
The
workforce.
workforce, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I guess, and I do want to put this layer on top as well. I think obviously that's where the majority use cases are landing for people. That's where the CISO concerns are coming from an internal perspective as well. Like now, the internal threat matrix has changed because of it. I guess when it comes to the other side where applications are integrating with AI, there'll be a whole other conversation at that point in time.
yeah.
For the workforce piece, where CISOs clearly have written a security program before, and they're obviously building or at least trying to fill that gap for what that could look like for this AI first world for the workforce. I'm curious for people who have probably started building on one because they've finally started unblocking, or people have already had a security program built in. What are you finding as the ways people can start approaching doing security for AI for where the majority use case is on the productivity side?
I think kind of it's probably similar to something I mentioned earlier, where I think the way that people are thinking about it and going through that is that getting that visibility layer first. So kind of getting that layer on like what what tools are being used within an organization, who's using them, how much are they using them, but also like what are they using them for? So trying to
Yep.
get a kind of lower level view onto like where's the AI adoption at, who's into it, where's the kind of use cases that are kind of people are using it for, but getting that kind of holistic view across their organization of what what does AI usage look like today, then I think the next thing people that we're working with are trying to do is around like, all right, where do we want to then make some changes? So like
Mm.
there's some parts where they can make changes within our products or things like trying to push people to approve tools. So there's some use cases where you're like, you could also do that. You're using, I don't know, Copilot, but we've bought ChatGPT Enterprise. Why aren't you using the Enterprise thing?
Oh yeah,
So there's
yeah,
that going on, and then there's more like given that education in time. So like if you do put sensitive data in, kind of telling people that, and then again trying to give them the direction they want to go down. So that kind of like intent based coaching, and then we've seen other things where we almost feed into other programs like the if you have that AI team or that AI committee, they're kind of taking bunch of our information and they're just kind of doing some other activities internally. Like there's a lot of people who are doing like AI training or they're trying to identify things like AI champions within their business so that you can try and get adoption to happen through them. Because if you think like
yeah,
it's like we can help we can help you understand what's going on, and in
yeah,
some cases we can help with controls. But if you're thinking about adoption, then like how do you push adoption within sales in a 4,000 person organization, you probably want to find the five people who are doing it really well and then use them to help do the adoption within that area rather than like
yeah,
doing
yeah,
like
yeah.
I think everyone's over the last 2 years, everyone's described to me like they've got some high level AI training, like this is how you write a prompt, this is what a chat GPT is like, and you're like, and I think that's useful, but then now it's like, oh, do we run that training again? Like, just this is actually what a prompt,
Oh,
or do you go into more of like, this is how Jim is using AI
yeah,
to generate better outbound emails, or to do follow ups, or to look through his account list and determine who to target next, or how to target them, and all the rest of it. So I think it's almost like that AI team. I think within a business, or the one within engineering I described. I think it's like fueling them with enough information to then go and help the AI adoption story and help that go on while providing the kind of controls and the kind of governance around that. And I think that's where it's where you mentioned it as kind of like it's not just a security concern, right? It's kind of more
yeah,
people concerns. And I think they need to work together. If the ones who do the best job, I think they've either got someone who's over a few different departments and can do that leverage across different bits, or they're like the one customer I'm thinking about. We meet they're kind of one of our bigger customers, but we meet them every week, and they've got the security, the kind of privacy and compliance, and legal join us every week. But all three of them join rather than just security, which I think is probably a sign
interesting.
that they all benefit and they've all got slightly different takes on what doing, but like they're
Yeah.
working together to think about like what their big thing is around. Like they need to like the industry they're in is kind of around advertising, and they're like, we really need to be at the forefront of AI. So they're
Yeah. Yeah.
permissive, but they're also like, we need to really focus on making sure that we're at the front of this. Like, if they don't adopt AI, they're almost like adopted AI type. Or, and not everyone thinks that way, but like
Of
that is
course.
probably a common thing that we hear.
Do you find that, I guess, how would you describe the maturity? Because in my mind, for people who are listening or watching this, they may have a question around, okay, I have some kind of security for AI. I'm like in that camp of, I feel I'm comfortable with AI. Are there any, I don't know, 2 or 3 stages that come to mind where, hey, if you're on stage one, that's like your basic foundation level. Stage two is like, I mean, there's room to improve, but you're better than most or whatever. Is there a kind of like a 3 scale or a 5 scale version that comes to mind for maturity of security in this space, where so people can actually think about what they're missing in their security programs for this?
Yeah. I think kind of, I've not got a maturity model, but we did lots of that in threat and
Yeah.
intelligence background.
Yeah.
So I'll try and make one up on the spot. I think like the top level is probably like, if you imagine the sort of like basic telemetry you might get out of a like kind of like firewall or a SASE tool. It's kind of like
Yeah. Yeah.
you can tell at a very high level that there's AI usage going on, and but probably not what it actually is, or like a bit more information around almost like subscription level information. So you can't quite tell where your risks are, but you can get a sense a high level of where your AI is at. I think the next level down would be that level where you have the understanding of usage and intent within AI, so you can understand things like the key use cases. You can understand things like the type of the tools that you're using and the versions. Are they all public tools? Are they tools that train on your data? Some more like an in-depth view of like your kind of inventory of AI usage. Like, what are my engineers doing around MCP? Are we using any? Are they remote? Are they local? But so like, if you imagine that level of just understanding, because like at that point you can then, even if you don't want to put any controls on, you can start setting policies against it. You can start having like human conversations about like, oh guys, we seem to be doing this over here. I need to go and talk to the head of engineering to stop that or
Yeah.
find out more about it. So I think given that level is the next one. The next level would be like adding those control based in, and I think I probably think about it as like access controls first. So just like some basic provisions around. A lot of people will say to us like, we don't want people using LLMs based in kind of geographic regions that we might not like, that are kind of
Yeah.
trained on data. So like, we want to kind of control that. We want to ensure that we've already made an investment. Like, most people have picked one or two different AI tools and they've paid a bunch of money for an enterprise agreement. So
Yeah.
they want to then push people to those rather than other tools. So you've got that kind of like basic access controls. Or if you broaden that to like MCP, that's where it come in around like, we've got these approved MCP servers, we've not approved these, or we're not going to allow you to delete production. We're not going to allow you to delete data from the Postgres MCP server, for example. And then I think below that's then where you start putting in, below that's when you start putting in the bottom level, which is that more intelligent coaching aspect. So you
Mm.
can coaching the AI and the users in real time around like, whenever some data or intent that they're trying to do isn't something that would benefit the organization, you can kind of step in line and coach and inform them about why it's not important. And that to me is like the policy in real time is like that type of things. It's almost like, I think about it as like real time training. It's like, oh, it's just about to happen. We stop it happening and then we train the employee in real time. So it's that sort of like knowledge share, and kind of then they're like to do that less over time. They might do it again, but they might not do it for a little while. They might do it
Yeah.
less often because you're training them piece by piece. It's kind of like bite-sized training for the individual.
I think you've kind of laid out the maturity framework because in my mind, the way I was thinking about this, and it aligns really well because depending on where the priority for the organization is, people can actually pick this, and depending on what layer they are, they can definitely go down that path as well. Is there a question that you feel almost this is now future looking in the next couple of years that you feel CISOs should uh, be looking out for in this particular space for AI security, especially for them from a workspace or from a workforce perspective, that you think people are not talking enough about?
Yeah, yeah, I think that the thing that's going to change is like if you think about like the workforce is adopting AI, but I think they're still on like they're trying to do a task, and that task is it might take them 5 prompts into an AI tool. And I think the AI is evolving as well. So like those,
Yeah,
to me, those tasks are going to become, for want of a better word, more agentic or more like flows, because instead of it being like one task and you have to kind of feed the AI lots of information, I imagine they'll become more connected and more knowledgeable, and they'll be able to kind of understand more about your business via different techniques that they're coming out. So you'll end up having more agentic processes going on within your environment, even if it's through ChatGPT interface or Gemini Copilot, whatever one you're using, or if it's using a more specialized tool like a kind of Claude Code or even the Claude Co-work came out this week. But I think where they're going, I think, is probably the most interesting from like a workforce perspective. So I think from like a security and AI governance point of view, it's like what are the I think you're still back to like what we're doing now, which is what are those tasks people are trying to do?
yeah.
What in what cases are those tasks things that we want people to do within a business, and then how can you do them securely? I think the big thing that's just changing is that they're going to become a bit more automated. So they're going to go from the user is doing 10 prompt responses in ChatGPT to the user might do three, and then the AI is doing more. It might connect to more systems. It might have more knowledge. But you're probably still trying to do the same task. You're still trying to send that sales outbound campaign that everyone loves, or
Yeah.
you're trying to fix a bug in code, or you're trying to write a new feature
Yeah.
in an engineering world. So but I think people are talking about that, so I think they're talking about it as like what are like I'm worried about agents, and then you're like, what are you actually worried about? Like, what do you mean by like, to me everything's an agent? Everyone's talking about like I don't know, Slack bots now rebranded as an agent, and like
Yep. I mean,
chat,
Salesforce has
you
an
know,
agent. Everyone has an agent.
so it's like people are like, oh, what should I do about agents is probably the thing I hear the most, and then you're like, well, what when you break it down, it comes back to the same challenges around like what are my employees doing, what are they using AI for within those kind of agentic flows, like what controls I need in place so that my data doesn't go to somewhere else, so that I don't get an adversarial attack, so that
Mm.
we don't end up spamming all our customers because we've got almost like a logic error within like the AI. The prompt isn't very clear, so the AI doesn't understand it. It does something we don't want. All these types of things come
Yeah.
back, but they're almost the same problems, but they're going to get more of them because the ability for AI to do them is going to be faster and greater.
That's very well put together, man. I think it's going to continue to evolve. And I think it's not, I'm going to add one more thing as well. It's not just about the evolving prompts, evolving models, cheaper model, expensive model. I think the other day we were talking about SLMs as well. You move from LLMs to SLMs because, or SMLs because they're cheaper. Yeah, once people start looking into this, they'll soon realize this life in AI is so much more bigger than just worrying about ChatGPT and Claude.
Yeah. And we use, so internally, we use small language models because we talked about coaching. So we need to get a response back within like 200 milliseconds.
Yeah.
And we want to look at intent. So we need to have a model that can understand the context and semantics of what's going in there. And we also want the model to explain to the end user what was wrong. So it needs to understand that context and it needs to
Yeah.
generate that response. So it's like
Yeah.
it's easier to build a small language model to do one thing, right? Or a smaller subset rather than like if you think Claude and like it's it's not just one big model that's doing everything as you use like a Claude or
That's
whatever,
right.
but
Yeah.
I think they're going to end up having more micro models or small language models, whatever you want to call them,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
embedded within that. And I think organizations will end up having that around their different job functions. And so like if someone's using, we talked about sales, there's a whole bunch of sales AI out there today that's probably, some of it's like a thin wrapper on an API,
Yeah.
some of it
Yeah.
will be, I think that what will win out is someone will develop their own like small language models or constrained models that are great at sales, and they'll be way better than something like OpenAI will be because they've been trained and for that specific purpose. I think that it will evolve in that direction, definitely.
And I think this is an interesting one, right? Because I think SML, I think a lot few people in an organization get to that SML stage to begin with. A lot of them are still on that LLM stage to even start talking about SML is like talking about 10 years in the future for a lot of companies. So maybe just on that, do you see the future would have a lot of organizations try and build SMLs for their governance policy, and then
I'm,
something like Harmonic would just be enabling it? Like you guys have the SMLs and they just give you policy, or where do you see the future kind of going in that direction? I mean, obviously we can't predict the glass. I'm going to put that caveat. We're not like predicting the future here. Just where's your gut feel going?
yeah, I think they still. It's like I talked about someone writing an MCP server taking 4 hours. Like to create your own small language models, not a quick job. So I think like the ability for organizations to make them themselves will be hard,
Because
and
you
I'll
need an
try to
ML person. You need that's where your head of AI, or what were you saying? AI development person comes in and they're like, oh,
yeah.
SMLs.
Yeah, so our small language models, they're built from an ML team, right? They're an
Yeah.
ML team who do all the traditional things that those teams do. Like they they get data together, whether however they do that, whether it's collecting real data, synthesizing data, they label it, they work out the different features within a small language model. What does that architecture look like? They train the
Yeah.
model, they have to test it, they have to go around, they have to deploy it, manage it. So like, yeah, I don't think organizations will use them or build them out of the box, but I think they will. My view is that like vendors like ourselves will kind of generate them, and then there'll be more special. Like we do ones around like sensitive data detection. There'll be ones around like intent of like trying to classify the intent behind usage. But if you imagine that's around, we're around AI adoption and controls and governance. So if you're a company who's doing like sales or marketing or whatnot, and there's a bunch of AI companies out there, like they're like, how do you build models for those areas? And like, you think coding is probably the one that's exploded, right? You've got all the main providers are trying to do AI coding, but then you've got like people like Cursor have written their own models and
Yep.
whatnot. I think like I imagine we'll see that more, but for lots of different parts of the kind of in
Like a
the
spread of SML providers everywhere in your organization.
yeah, I think so. And like, you might still have like a general one, like a Claude that will cover, maybe it covers code and engineering and it covers two or three other cases, but I think there's kind of room, I think, for like specialist providers to almost take the same inspiration from like how LLMs work and but focus them on smaller problem sets or smaller business domains. I think
Mm,
that's going to happen.
interesting. Yeah, dude, thanks for sharing this because those are all the technical questions I had. I've got three fun questions for you. I'll probably try and go through them very
Okay.
quickly. First one being, what do you spend most time on when you're not trying to solve AI security problems?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I got 3 kids, so like the being a founder of a startup and having 3 kids is pretty much all the
Yeah,
hours in the day at the minute. So
that sounds like a busy schedule in there.
yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
I've got the second question, which is, what is something that you're proud of that is not on your social media?
Oh, no, I think everything's on my social media. Um, probably the weirdest thing was when I was starting Digital Shadows like 12, 13 years ago, whatever it was. I wasn't a founder there because I decided I wanted to make a feature film. So he went off and started Digital Shadows, and I went and made a feature film, and
Oh,
then he got some money, and I went and joined them afterwards. So
ah, wait. So
that
did your feature film play in one of those event cinemas or somewhere?
we did. So we had even that we did like a cinema tour of the UK. So we did about like 15, 16 dates, and
Oh,
uh,
wow. So you had the whole movie poster in your house somewhere as well?
well, there is it is somewhere, but it's not in my room. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
fair.
do have. one with it signed by all the cast and whatnot. So yeah.
Oh, wow. Wait, were you the producer, director? What was your
Uh,
role?
I did it. I wrote, directed, and produced. So it's like uh,
Director and produced by Bryan,
yeah,
and behind the camera, Bryan acting Bryan.
yeah. I did do a cameo, but as you might expect. But yeah, that was.
Oh, there you go.
But that's
That's
probably on
awesome, man.
social media, but like from a long time ago. So you
Fair,
might have to
fair. I
hunt to
mean,
find it.
I look forward to. But what's the name of the movie, if you don't mind me asking?
It's called Booked Out. YouTube will have the trailer
Oh,
somewhere.
right. Okay. I'll put the trailer in the mix as well. A final question: what's your favorite cuisine or restaurant that you can share with us?
Maybe not a cuisine restaurant, but like my favorite thing is pork dumplings.
Oh, with the chili sauce?
Yeah, well, you get ones where it's like it's got the soup in them. Have you ever
Oh,
tried
yeah,
it?
yeah. But is that the one with the chili soup kind of thing, or is it the one that like the shalong baos? I can't remember. I think they call the shalong baos. But yeah, I know what you mean. The soup drawn dumplings thing.
Yeah,
Also, pork dumplings.
yeah. But if anything, if I'm ever right and they've got pork dumplings on the menu, even if I'm not that hungry, I'll get that as a side order as well. So like, it's just like I have to do it if they're on there. I have to try them, which is
Oh, awesome, awesome.
it's
I,
hard
I
if you
mean,
go to like a proper like dumpling restaurant and there's like a million to choose from. You're like, what do I do
yeah,
now?
yeah. I mean, just give me the pork dumplings, the regular.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair man. Those are good though. Those are all the fun questions I had. In terms of finding out about Harmonic and what you guys do, and connecting with you and talking about how you guys are going down the path of being AI secure internally or externally, however it may be. Where can people find you and connect with you? What's your
Yeah,
LinkedIn?
so yeah, I think obviously our website harmonic.security has got a whole bunch of resources, information on it. I think that I'm on LinkedIn, like I'm happy for people to reach out on LinkedIn and kind of start discussions with me on there. And yeah, and on our website there's kind of like a guided walkthrough of like our products, and if you're someone like me who wants to see it before you talk to a salesperson, then that's we want to kind of focus on that area rather than like just click the get a demo button, but that is all there on the website as well.
I appreciate that. I would put those links in the show notes as well. But thank you so much for coming on the show as well. And this is a great conversation. Thank you for being upfront about what you guys are doing and how you guys are adopting AI and in a developer friendly way, which is always good to know. So thank you so much for sharing that as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's been great fun. So yeah.
Thank you for listening or watching this episode of Cloud Security Podcast. This was brought to you by TechRiot.io. If you are enjoying episodes on cloud security, you can find more episodes like these on cloudsecuritypodcast.tv, our website, or on social media platforms like YouTube, LinkedIn, and Apple Spotify. In case you are interested in learning about AI security as well, do check out our sister podcast called AI Security Podcast, which is available on YouTube, LinkedIn, Spotify, Apple as well, where we talk to other CISOs and practitioners about what's the latest in the world of AI security. Finally, if you're after a newsletter, it just gives you top news and insight from all the experts we talk to at Cloud Security Podcast. You can check that out on cloudsecurity.newsletter.com. I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.